What's up everyone, my name is Zenitsu, and we are back with another Digimon video. So today we are going to be doing some commentating over some high-level gameplay, and that is going to be coming from the Dallas Nationals. So there were two recorded games, one from day 1 and one from day 2. I'll just be doing day 1's gameplay in this video, and in another video I'll cover day 2's. So let's dive right into the match and see how things unfolded. So I do know what decks were played, and I also do know what the outcome was, but it definitely is interesting to see that one of the decks is going to be Purple Hybrids, because a lot of people kind of wrote off Purple Hybrids, and Purple Hybrids I still think is a pretty strong and reasonable deck. And the second deck is going to be of Mastemon using a yellow base. So Purple Hybrids is already doing their ever so classical start of Uko turn 1 into the Tamer. So this is the memory gain Uko, because that one costed 0, which allowed them to play the Tamer. And on the Mastemon side, they are also just going to be setting up their Tamer. So pretty classical starts of let's kind of not really do a whole lot of anything, but start setting up for our power turns in the later stages of the game. So it looks like the Purple Hybrid player is going to be digivolving into Gazi. They are not going to be swinging with Ukomon because it doesn't look like they're afraid of their Ukomon dying, so that way they can keep extra tempo and momentum in the later turns for when that Gazimon moves out. Then they are going to be playing a Purple Memory Boost, so that way they have some additional memory later on. So that's going to be cool to see when they utilize that. And it looks like on the Mastemon side, they are just going to be playing a memory boost themselves. So far, we've just seen Tamers and memory boosts, with Purple Hybrids being the only one that's actually developing a board at this point. So Purple Hybrids gets to move out, they get to hatch a new egg, you gain an additional memory, so they are in a pretty good spot. But Purple Hybrids, knowing them, they are not 100% set up. They're probably mostly set up at this point. So they're just going to continue to try to choke the opponent out and play a mat to get as set up as possible while the opponent really isn't doing anything. They are missing a rookie drop, which is not necessarily the greatest, but it's not the worst either. And it looks like from the Mastemon side of things, they are just going to be playing a Gatomon to try to search out some of their other cards. So it looks like the Mastemon player also is now missing a rookie. So interesting that they do have a Volder arm set up in their trash from the Tamer in the early stages. So maybe they're just looking for the Duskmon, which it looks like they just drew. So now the Purple Hybrid player is allowed to aggress very hard, and they're going to be changing the color of their Gatomon, so that way they might not be able to Digivolve on top of it, let alone try to Ace on top of it, because sometimes Mastemon decks do like to run Angewomon Ace because it's a very cheap level 5 Digimon to play out. So they are going to be milling a whole bunch of cards out of their deck. We do see a mill trigger in the form of a Rivals Barrage. So Rivals Barrage gets played out, which could grab back a Duskmon later, because that's one of the most important things to this deck, is basically your Dusk management and trying to make sure you can always use and reuse it. So it looks like they are going to delete their own Digimon to get some on-delete effects. They have the Tamer to gain them in memory, and then they have the Duskmon to be able to replay the Tamer. Then the Tamer is going to allow them to draw and discard a card. So that's already a lot of tempo, just because, you know, they didn't necessarily lose a whole lot, on top of the fact that they actually got an additional card set up that's going to grab the most likely Duskmon later. So they are going to be discarding a Nidhogg, which is huge because they get a gain of memory for discarding Nidhogg, and then the mat can allow them to gain an additional memory because they discarded. So they literally effectively didn't lose a whole lot, but it looks like they're opting not to use the mat, and they're just going to choke the opponent at 1 and set up the Koichi that's going to allow them to grab back hybrid-based cards when their Digimon attacks. So it does have to be on an inheritable for them to get that effect, so they do need 2 Duskmons. So we already know that they have 1 in their trash already, so maybe they have the second Duskmon or they drew into it. But either way, they could discard a card for some extra memory, so they could start at like 4, 5 memory next turn, which is a lot. So it looks like the Mastemon player is just going to continue to try to set something up and play another memory boost. So Purple Hybrids is already off to the races because they get to gain a memory from the Uko, turbo out their raising area. And now they have a whole bunch of Cupid inheritables that they could try to trigger. They have a whole bunch of Ukomons. Well, they have 1 Ukomon that they could swing with. So it looks like they don't have another rookie, so they don't mind swinging with the Ukomon, which is pretty good for them because they get to try to cycle through their deck thanks to the Demi-Miramon egg. So looks like they are going to be discarding a memory boost because they don't feel like they need it. I don't know if I would swing with this Gazi because they do have 2 memory boosts. Now they have 3, which is really unfortunate that the Gazi is locking them out of that. So the Gabumon's going to be swinging this time, and the Gabumon is going to die, which will trigger the Cupid to discard a card and gain a memory, which they could gain an additional memory off of the mat if they really wanted to. But it looks like they are not going to do that, and they're just going to Digivolve into another Duskmon. So I think there's a Dusk already in their trash, which is going to be pretty important. So they're going to change the color of the Mirai. They're going to swing with the Dusk. They're going to grab back a Dusk that's already in the trash and Digivolve into a Vulgarmon. So looks like they didn't use the Koichi inheritable yet. I don't necessarily think it matters exactly when. I think they want to just see all of the options with the additional mill before they trigger the Koichi. So, yeah, we already knew that they were going to grab the Dusk because that's how the deck works. So the Dusk is going to, well, I guess technically Vulgar is going to attack, and then they are not going to delete their Digimon, and they already have another Dusk to just swing for the game and close things out pretty effectively. So that was a very strong and commanding game 1. That was probably just only a couple of minutes, too. But that really goes to show how, like, a singular Ukomon and some Floodgates really can stall out the opponent pretty efficiently because they aren't able to utilize all of their memory boosts to be able to actually, play their cards effectively when they don't have a rookie start. So, yeah, it just was a pretty fast game 1, but that's what Purple Hybrids excels at, is just the reusing of your resources, the ease of setup, and the hyper-aggression thanks to just the Ukomon and Floodgate combo. And usually in those style of decks where they're going to be running Ukomons, Floodgates, they'll have like 1 actual Digimon, like a rookie, that's not necessarily meant to Digivolve, but it's supposed to gain some additional resources. So that's just going to be a common trend throughout a lot of those style of decks. So we see that in Genkumon, where they're just going to be running a very similar style lineup when it comes to their rookies, because they don't necessarily care about Digivolving past their rookies, and they have alternative ways to be able to play out their big bodies to do their things. And hybrid decks excel at that because obviously it's coming from the Tamers. So yeah, it's very easy to see why those types of decks are some of the more aggressive decks and some of the more popular decks, because you don't necessarily need to rely on your rookies if you don't have them, because you have alternative ways to utilize your cards, because your Tamers are essentially rookies. So you saw that with the Mastemon player, they had a little bit of a hard time because they didn't have a rookie start. So this time they actually do have the rookie start, and it is a Patamon, which is the most ideal rookie, and they're going to be hard playing a Gatomon. That's a little bit risky, but they feel like they need the searching, because Gatomon at least costs 4, so it's not like a whole lot, but still giving Purple Hybrid the ability to just set up even faster or play some of their better setup cards sooner is definitely not necessarily the most ideal. 4 memory doesn't necessarily matter as much because they don't run any like 2-cost and memory cards, so it's not like they could super efficiently choke. So they're just going to be passing back without playing an additional card. They're just going to set up their Tamer and call it a day there. So Psychmon is set up. I think Psychmon is okay-ish in this matchup. It's not necessarily like super relevant, but it can come up. But they saw the Digimon in their raising area, which is a Gatomon. Gatomon allows them to basically discard a card and then pick it back up, and the Patamon's going to allow them to gain an additional memory because it sees the card that it's going to be interacting with. So yeah, the two-colored Gatomon is okay. They're just checking the ability of it. So that's the one that allows you to just grab back a two-colored card. So if they had like a Mastemon or something in their trash, then they would be able to discard a card and grab that one back. So, but the Patamon inheritable does allow them to cycle through. So, because he digivolved from the thing, and I think they're just trying to figure out the resolution on the recovery. Maybe they didn't shuffle. So that might be what's going on here. But outside of that, the fact that they have 4 memory is pretty relevant for Mastemon because now they can kind of just set up because they could evolve into a level 5 and then use that level 5 to maybe do something else and set up either like a Mastemon Ace or set up like another level 5 and then get end of turn DNA. Because I think that Gatomon has end of turn DNA. I don't quite remember because I haven't seen a whole lot of Mastemon in quite a while. But either way, Mastemon looks like they're in a pretty powerful position, being able to set up pretty effectively this time versus game 1. So that's supposedly, I don't exactly know what's going on. I probably should have had the audio on or at least watched this beforehand, but this is the first time I'm actually seeing this. I just know the outcome. So they're trying to figure out how things are actually resolving, which is kind of awkward because I would have thought that would have been pretty obvious. So were they not able to digivolve into the Gatomon? Oh, maybe they weren't able to digivolve into the Gatomon and that was the big issue, so they're rewinding. Yeah, then that might make this a little bit more complicated if they weren't actually able to resolve the Patamon. Because then they're missing out on the memory and that free evolution. So this just makes things harder. I mean, Purple Hybrid doesn't really have a whole lot as of right now. So it's not like impossible, but it definitely would have been nice to digivolve into that Gatomon. So good to know that they basically just tried to rewind the clock. I almost wish they would also have who won game 1 right next to their name instead of hiding it all the way at the bottom. So we have to keep in mind that in the event, this footage was taken at round 3. So it's not like super deep into the event as of this moment. So maybe that's why, like, because we already know what top 16 was, because top 16 was already revealed before I even like recorded this. And Mastemon, spoiler, does not make it in top 16. So they're just going to be setting up a Mirai as their alternative play and kind of just going from there. So Purple Hybrid gets to raise out, and then they get to use Koichi to gain a memory by discarding a hybrid. So they're going to be using that memory to go into a Loimon. Interesting. We haven't seen a whole lot of like Duskmons actually play Loimons. They'll play the Jaeger just because, like the card that they discarded, because that's just a pretty easy and good card for them to use, but we haven't seen a whole lot of Lois specifically. So they are going to be attacking into their security. They're going to be digivolving into the Kaiser Leo, so that way they can gain retaliation, and yeah. So Kaiser Leo is going to check the known Gatomon, because that's what Patamon was trying to digivolve into and then couldn't. So that was a pretty safe and easy swing there. And now what are they going to do? Because are they going to digivolve up again into like what, an Arrestor Superior, because I know sometimes Purple Hybrids likes to use that type of a card to control the field, and it looks like that's exactly what they're going to do. They're going to go up into Arrestor Superior, and it could attack suspend without suspending, and it even has Raid and Piercing. So it's going to probably be at least 12, 13k, and it's going to do one check. So it is a Anguamon. So now we get to go to the Mastemon's turn, and they get to use Mirai to just gain a free memory, which is really important. Gatomon will not be coming out of security this time, as we already know that Patamon whiffed the first time around, so it's going to whiff again. So now they have to figure out what can they do off of this memory. So at least they have the Mirai set up, because I think that Mirai just lets them set up the second body to DNA. So they're just going to go into the Gatomon. This is the starter deck Gatomon, so they don't really gain a whole lot of value from it, but they do get to reduce the Digivolution cost to go into a Lady Devi, which is really good, so they can set up a secondary body. So they're going to be grabbing the Anguamon, which we know is in the trash. Then they're going to be suspending the Mirai to be able to play out the secondary body so they can then DNA Digivolve. And it is going to be the Anguamon that was just grabbed. Then we get to gain a memory for doing so because of the Lady Devi's ability. And we get to DNA into the Promo Mastemon. So the Promo Mastemon is actually a pretty powerful card. We get to remove a security, and then we get to, add a card back. I don't exactly remember what the card does, but it's going to do something similar to what Mastemon does, is most likely just play out an additional body, which could set up the ace. I'm going to grab the Mastemon. So the Mastemon, when you Digivolve, they get to recover one, which will trigger the Patamon's effect to be able to add a card, or add a memory. And then they get to place one of their, and then they get to place one Digimon or Tamer to the top or bottom of the security stack, and then trash the top of the opponent's security stack. So they are going to try to remove the Arrestor, but because of the Loemon, they get to at least keep the Koichi Tamer, which is pretty decent. And the secondary part is when Mastemon Digivolved and when she attacks, they get to trash the top card of their security and play out a purple Digimon with 6k DP or less. Purple or yellow Digimon from their hand or trash. So that's how they got the second Lady Devi on the field. So Mastemon's in a pretty commanding position. She is going to Alliance for 2 checks, knowing that at least the first, or at least Arrestor was in there. But Rival's Barrage comes out of security and deletes the Mastemon, and this does not have partition. So this card is just gone, and that really set them very far back. They already used a Mirai, so they can't necessarily go into Mastemon again. So yeah, that was a pretty brutal second hit, but at least it was on the second hit versus the first hit, because if you weren't able to get that second check in, then that would be extra rough. They are going to use the Koichi to discard a Duskmon to be able to gain a memory and Digivolve into a second Duskmon, so they're pretty much set up to continue to Dusk Loop. So it's just what they're going to be changing to what color, and how they are going to be milling, because they're definitely going to be attacking, and now the Vulgar gets to mill. So they would have 4 colors, so they mill each 4, because the ideal play would be to change a single Mirai into an off color, so that way there's oh no, it's only 3. My math is just bad. And then they get to do the check, which is another Anguamon. So yeah, this is going to be, they are going to delete their Duskmon, which will replay the Koichi. I don't know if they grabbed back the Duskmon from their trash or not. Maybe they have an extra Dusk, in case they, already went through 3 Dusks, or at least 2 Dusks. They are going to be swinging with the Psych because it's not super relevant in this matchup. They probably just need the additional memory to maybe try to choke the opponent out. So they are going to be discarding a Rookie to gain a memory. Interesting. So are they going to set up an Ukomon and do something else? Because the Mirai gets to at least give them a memory by default. So yeah, they are going to be setting up the Ukomon, which is why they did that. I don't remember if the 4-drop Mirai is a Mem Setter Mirai or not. I know the 3-drop one isn't, and that just helps you dig and search out your cards a little bit more. So it'll be interesting to see what they're going to do, and they are going to utilize a Calling from the Darkness to be able to grab a Dusk and grab one other card. So they're just going to be grabbing both Dusks. Interesting that they're grabbing both. I guess it doesn't matter if they grab both Dusks or not, because they would rather just have them in their hand. So that way they could discard one off of the Koichi and then grab it back with the Koichi. That's probably the idea, because they already have a Vulgar in their trash. So now we get to see what Mastemon is going to be cooking. They get to go to 2 memory because the 5-drop Mirai just gains them a memory by default, and they set up their Patamon and they're just going to try to set up again. So they get to use the Gatomons on play to dig for another Lady Devimon. So they're going to tap the Mirai to gain a memory to make that play a little bit more efficient and choke at 1, which is fine. It's not great because the Koichi will still put them to 2. The Uko will search, but they do get a free evolution here, and then they get to set up another body, right? Because of the Lady Devi's ability. And if they have end of turn DNA, then they might be able to go into a Mastemon again, which will at least recover 1, which is relevant. Oh, the Lady Devi also gains the memory, so they get to keep turn 2 DNA into the Mastemon, which will then allow them to recover 1. They won't gain any additional memory, but having the extra security still is going to be helpful. They get to actually remove the Tamer? Is that how that card works? Hold up. Mastemon. By placing one other Digimon to the top or bottom. Yeah, so they basically just get to put it into security and then burn the security. Huh. I guess Mastemon does have Tamer Hate built in now. That's kind of neat. I guess that's why the promo is like super strong. And then they're just going to pass their turn by setting up a memory boost. So Mastemon is actually in a pretty commanding position because of the fact that they were able to remove the Tamer, which is a very big deal. Especially since this Ukomon isn't necessarily going to be doing that much. It gets to grab another card. I think you just grab the Gallant at this point just to delete the Mastemon. So you'd swing with the... So they're counting how much cards are in their trash for the Gallant to see if it's live, because the Ukomon will put 3 cards extra into the trash. So they are going to be taking the Gallantmon as a very powerful reactive play to this Mastemon. I think like that's going to be like super pivotal, depending on how things develop from here. So they're going to set up a Gabumon. They have to swing with this Ukomon, hope it gets deleted. So that way, oh, they're just going to block. So yeah, that's probably fine. Block even though the cards are going to go into the trash anyway, you might as well just save yourself on the security. There is the off chance that it could have been like a memory boost, and then the Uko would stay, and then they can't play the Gallantmon because the Gallantmon needs an empty field to play himself out for like extra cheap. With both players' trashes pretty full, this is most likely going to be either super cheap or borderline free Gallantmon, which is why like a lot of decks are also relying on like these Gallantmons to be able to make some very powerful comebacks happen out of nowhere. So it's going to cost 1 to play the Gallantmon, and then the Gallantmon's going to delete the Mastemon again. And yeah, now we're looking at another clean field and another free security gone because it also has Rush. And now they just, set up a Tamer, put them to 1, then Mastemon's going to go to 2 with 1 security. That's going to be pretty hard to come back from. Especially since we know that they won't be able to gain access at that free Digivolution because there's only 1 card in their security and it's not a level 4. So that's exactly what they're going to do. They're going to hard play the Gazi to stop the memory boost. So that's pretty smart because they were going to go to basically 2 anyway, but this effectively stops a lot of what they could potentially do because they won't be able to gain enough memory to keep turn, and if they don't have end of turn DNA, they won't be able to get into a Mastemon. So, yeah, this is looking pretty rough because the Gato is going to cost 2 to Digivolve into at least, if not 3. Oh, they swung with their Patamon into the Gallant. Interesting choice. So that way they could hard play the Gato. Ooh, oh, that's how they get end of turn DNA. So let's see what kind of happens from here. So the Gato gets played. They dig out their cards. Mirai will gain them a memory, which is safe for them to do. And then they get to bottom deck the Mirai to do something. Mirai will let them Digivolve into a Anguamon, and then the second Mirai will let them Digivolve into Mastemon because they're going to hard play the Lady Devi off of the effect. But the Gazi is going to basically block the memory gain. So they'll Digivolve and pass turn on another Mastemon, which is still pretty powerful. Like, having the ability to just Masty out of nowhere is still very strong. So they get to recover 1. They get to put the Gallantmon into security. They're putting it to the bottom so they can trash the top. Trashing a memory boost. That's pretty good because that way it denies them their ability. So they want to do this because they don't want to trigger any security effects. And then they get to set up a second Lady Devi, and the second Lady Devi will kill the Gazimon. So yeah, that's a pretty powerful comeback turn from Mastemon, showing that off of literally nothing but 2 Tamers setup, they can still go into a Mastemon and do quite a lot. They're going to raise out the Gabumon. The Gabumon will gain them a memory. Is this a part where you just Digivolve on top of the Gabumon into a Dusk for 3 and then swing Digivolve into a Vulgar in your trash to reset up your Tamer for free? They are going to be swinging into security with the Gabu. And it looks like Mastemon does have the Masty Ace play. So that's going to basically allow them to try to stabilize the field a little bit more. And they get to potentially get rid of the Gabumon. I don't remember if Masty Ace is deleting or if it's doing the whole security shenanigans. The security shenanigans would be more ideal because then it won't trigger the QP, so it's effectively denying a memory. But they are going to be playing the Anguamon off of the Masty Ace, and then they won't gain the memory because the Digimon wasn't deleted. So they're just counting how many cards are in the trash, maybe probably for another Gallant play. So Gallant play would be very powerful here because it would delete the Mastemon and make the Masty Ace actually a really bad play, because now they would gain memory for them basically sacrificing their rookie. So it did keep a damage off, so it does technically kind of prevent lethal as of right now. But maybe the Masty Ace play was a misplay, and this is kind of like why aces are like a huge risk. Oh, they're just passing. They don't got anything. They're not going to play anything? That's interesting. Okay. Yeah, so Mastemon gets put into a even stronger position because one of the Masties has Alliance. I mean, this is where Mastemon kind of starts to falter a little bit. Like, Mastemon's in a very commanding position, don't get me wrong. And Purple Hybrids is technically still not out of the game because of the Gallantmons. But the fact that they could just establish more bodies means that, like, if Gallantmon doesn't come out, or like the Purple Hybrid player doesn't have anything, they're probably going to be losing next turn. So a memory boost comes out, and then there's the Arrestor we already knew was in security. All of the Purple Hybrid players' security should be known. So it should be another Digimon and then the Gabu in security. So their security is pretty Light. No, it's the Gallant. So next is Gallant and then Gabu. So they know they can't swing with the 13k Masty, the Masty Ace, otherwise they're just handing free memory away. So, like, I think you just either chip or figure something else out because there's no barrier on Masty either. So it's not like they have a way to protect themselves. I think you just have to, like, again, this is where the lack of damage output really kind of makes certain decks feel like they're lacking some kind of like actual push to win factor, because Mastemon should ideally have won in this type of a position, but because they can't, that really gives purple hybrids the opportunity to find a way to come back, which, knowing purple hybrids, it definitely can, especially since Gallantmon is a card and it's a very live and active card, and it might even be free at this point. And then it'll delete the, Masty Ace, and then the Mastemon player kind of just cries, and they have to try to hope on another Masty Ace play. But the Gallantmon should be able to kill at least two, so maybe they leave the Masty... Oh, no, they're just Death Xing. There's just enough things to just straight up Death X, de-digivolve, gain a whole bunch of memory, and take a lot of the steam out of the sails of Mastemon. That's pretty huge. So if they have like a Dusker Vulgar setup, like if they're able to use it, which I don't think they're able to in this type of a board state, that would be pretty big, because then they could like delete everything. But they're going to be playing the Louis to raise out the Uko. So the Louis will suspend and gain a memory, so it's effectively a 2-cost Louis instead of a 3-cost Louis. That's their last egg, so maybe they're going to use the Uko to swing, chip at the security, and gain a memory, ideally. And then, delete the Death Xmon to the Promo Gallant and swing for the game? Is that kind of what I'm thinking is going to happen? Can't necessarily see their hands super well. They do have a purple source because the Death X is a purple source, so they still have access to their purple options, even though all of their other cards are white cards. So playing that Death X was definitely important. So they are going to be using their 1 of Jack Raid to gain 2 memory, because, you know, that's not broken, and the card was so strong it was limited to 1 for a reason. So Ukamon does chip. Ooh, that's a Bolt Boutmon. Interesting. So they do try to line up Mastemons to DNA into a Bolt Bout. Interesting. Okay. But the Ukamon does die, and he does get to discard and gain a memory. He is just going to be... Oh, he hard drops the Genku Promote. And the Genku Promote has Rush for Game, and there is no Ace play in response. And that's going to be Purple Hybrids taking this game. So, wow, that goes to show you that just gaining a lot of memory and playing rush bodies and playing high-level Digimon for effectively cheap really can just turn the tides of any game, because that's how the Mastemon player was able to re-establish a Mastemon and build a big board, was because they had the setup to be able to instant Mastemon out of nowhere. And in response, the purple hybrid player, all they needed to do was just utilize their rush bodies. So they had the Promo Gallant as a live play, potentially. They had the Genkumon Promote as a live play. They just had so much ability to aggress that it made it very, I guess, easy to make those kinds of comeback and big swings to kind of push for the game. But again, this is what I was saying, where because the Mastemon lacked the damage output, it controlled well enough, but it lacked the actual ability to close out the game when it needed to, and that's what let Purple Hybrid be able to close out the game, because it had a lot of early game pressure to shut out the potential at a comeback, because all they needed was just ways to squeeze out that little extra last bit of damage, which they were able to do pretty handily and easily. So yeah, that was a pretty interesting match to see how things unfolded from there. So if you enjoyed this type of content, you already know what to do. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and don't forget to ring that notification bell so you can stay up to date when I upload or go live next. So I'll probably do another video covering the finals match that happened on day 2, so stay tuned for that, and I hope to see you all in the next video. Later.